So, welcome to our digital event for the day where we are going to be talking about how to unblock your data model so you can unlock your revenue and break the CRM data bottleneck. So, we are here with our friends from Go-to-Market Engine. I have Rob Moseley, who is the CEO and co-founder over at Go-to-Market Engine, Courtney Sylvester, who is a freelance RevOps consultant and founder at, is it Stygian, Courtney?
Stygian. Go for whatever
Stygian.
you want. I'm not
Okay.
here to police people how they pronounce things.
All right. And then we have Jared Barol, who former VP of RevOps at Copy.ai, formerly at Salesforce, just guy who's done a lot of things and is now actually in a new gig that he will at some point announce to the world over the next couple weeks. At least that's what he's promised. And so I'm just going to say that out loud so that he's now on the clock. So, welcome to our panelists. Welcome to all the attendees out there. I'm Matt Volm, CEO and founder of RevOps Co-op. We have a global community of 18,000 plus revenue operators from every nook and cranny of the world. We do a whole lot of programs for our members, digital events and webinars like these. We have in-person events, newsletters, Slack group. We have courses, just launched a new revenue operations certifications, lots of different ways you can get involved. I'll drop some links to a couple of different things in the chat as we go along. But with that, Rob, I actually want to turn it over to you to maybe tell us a little bit more just about yourself, Go-to-Market Engine, and then the topic that we're getting into and start to kind of drive us through the content for the day.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Appreciate that. Thanks, Matt. I think it's only fair where I say where I'm from. So I'm in San Francisco, by way of Minnesota. So I did get a little bit of pleasure out of watching that Packers loss.
Yeah.
But we're not doing too good ourselves as a Vikings fans. So I can't really say much. But yeah, so Go-to-Market Engine, we've been around for about a year. This is actually my ninth startup, first one I founded, but prior, I was part of the founding go-to-market team at 8 different startups. And being more on the technical side, I kind of like put the systems together and held that RevOps and solutions type role, kept encountering the same problems over and over, which is why we birthed Go-to-Market Engine. So we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about more around the concepts and how to set this up the right way, because obviously with Gen AI, there's a lot of things that you can do now that you couldn't do before. That opens up a lot of possibilities. But of course, everything starts with the foundation, getting the foundation right. So we're going to talk about how to get that foundation right. I don't know if Courtney and Jared, if you guys want to say a little bit more about yourselves before we get into the topic.
Courtney, you want to go first?
I'm sure. So hi, Courtney Sylvester. I'm actually in the DC area, which is, I saw someone from Philly, so you're the closest, I guess, to me, one of the few people outside of California these days. I really just work with ops teams, and I like to come in and fix or pre-build something for companies. So typically whatever, I work with a lot of organizations who are either really forward thinking and wanting to build out a lot of automation and AI into what they're doing, or people with just like massive problems and they don't know or don't have the time to fix them. So I'm a big fan of when, I guess, just giant messes, just like huge messes. That's usually where I typically come in and work with organizations and their ops teams.
And Jared Barol. So I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. Grew up in Philadelphia though, and school out there as well. And then I think that where I've found a niche for myself has been transformation. So good transformation and bad transformation. Rapid growth and cost reduction is kind of where I've spent the last decade, and help companies move from the before to the after and all the trauma that entails.
Awesome. And you do have a big announcement coming up, which is a really cool announcement. So I'm not gonna ruin that for you, but everybody keep an eye peeled for that.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
I'm gonna plug the podcast episode I just did with Jared. We went over all these. He built this really great RevOps archetype kind of matrix. There's like a test you can take to kind of figure out like where you land in this 2x2 matrix. It's awesome. I'll drop a link to that in there. Yeah, the guy's filled with knowledge. But with that, Rob, I'll turn it back to you, my friend.
Cool. Awesome. We're going to talk super exciting stuff. It's all about data, which hopefully everybody enjoys. But like starting this off, I always like to frame this as, I mean, these are probably the questions that like RevOps folks like you get all the time. You know, I would get them all the time, and they should be really easy, which I think is like why people ask them, right? It's like CS will ask something like, "What do we promise this customer during the sales process?" And getting that out of sales after closed one is like pulling teeth. I've been a part of both sides of those conversations. You know, why are they buying from us? Who are our biggest champions? You know, what use cases resonate the most with our core ICPs is something that marketing always asks. Like they really don't know, right? Like they have to either listen to a bunch of gong calls, which you only have limited time for, or try to like ask sales or CS, like, who can I talk to, right? Who would be good for a case study? Who likes what we're doing? You know, who can I talk to about this stuff to figure out our messaging? And that's pretty crazy because it's extremely, extremely inefficient. Previously, I was at a company called Harvey, legal AI space, and the board just asked a question like, what % of our pipeline is law firms versus in-house legal teams? Super simple question, but we couldn't answer it, right? So then the RevOps team went, they created another field in Salesforce on the opportunity object. That was just a pick list. Of course, the sales team didn't actually fill that out because they don't care. Like it's not their job to fill that out, even though it is their job to fill it out. They don't care. It took like 3 months. We finally had an answer. It was just like a throwaway question as well. So there was that field. Then 3 months when we actually had the report, nobody trusted it because nobody believed the data that reps were putting in. But then that field remains, right? So then now every single time that a rep runs an opportunity, they have another field, and then another question comes up, and then there's another field, and another question comes up, and there's another field, and then I'm sure everybody here, you know, it's been a part of, you know, Salesforce implementation. It's been around for, I don't know, it's like more than a year. Like it gets totally out of hand, right? There's just too much stuff in there. It's empty. The data sucks. Nobody knows like why this stuff is still there, but you're afraid to pull it out and clean things up because God knows like what sort of stuff that's going to break down the line. Right. So like basically like the fundamental premise here is that like everything is broken at the ground level. Right. And like you can't fix any of this stuff, like bolting on tools on top of that and stuff is not going to work until you fix the fundamental problem. And I think it's like it's really this, right? It's basically it comes down to this. Like people are supposed to be data entry, like basically like ETL monkeys. Salesperson has a conversation, they enter data. And Jared, I know like when we were at, you know, we were both at Copy.ai prior as well. You know, we worked towards some of this stuff. I'd like to hear, you know, your perspective on this problem in particular, maybe like examples of where you've seen it and how to get around it.
Yeah, and I'll preface with in my career, I've been an SDR, I've been an AE, I've been an RVP, I've been head of sales, I've been an SE, I've been an SE leader, and so I've been the customer or victim of a lot of these systems too. I was probably one of the worst at filling out Salesforce fields, and Pipedrive, which is the first CRM I use, which is well anyway. You know, I think that a lot of the problem here comes to two different things. What are you motivating people to do? Are you motivating them to fill out fields? Or are you motivating them to sell? Because they'll be dismotivated to do anything else besides what you motivate them to do. Two, how difficult is it to do the other stuff that you're asking them to do? I spoke to someone yesterday who talked a lot about how just ugly a lot of the CRMs are that we are forced to use, and how difficult they are, and how how they're counterintuitive. That doesn't help win someone over who's being paid to do anything other than fill this out. And so we have to remember reps are coin operated. So I'm a very big believer in, you know, in eliminating or reducing to the most amount possible human required input. And I think if you look at the history of CRM, so a couple of years ago, so I was at Salesforce for a while. A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with someone who just left Salesforce, but he was VP of strategic research there, and he was there, I think, 18 years. And he told me about how they initially went into the sales direction, and the reason was it was so like you know, not having a point of view is hard to sell, so let's pick a point of view. Okay, sales, and all the other options were just so hard to use. And that was a key driver. Let's make it easier.
Yeah.
Let's make it Easier to buy,
I mean,
easier to
it's
sell.
basically what CRMs, right? They're basically just like CRUD interfaces for databases, right?
Yeah, which was great back when humans had to do it. And now we're in an age where humans don't have to do it. And so what's the best interface for that? I don't know.
I think you also have to be careful. And so in my experience, like working with like really small companies or really large companies, everybody's kind of like a different flavor of something like the same thing in most cases. But one thing that's universal is that sales teams, like, I don't know if you guys have ever been on sales calls. If not, you absolutely should if you don't have a sales background. I cannot tell you how many times I've walked out and I'm like, they're like, oh yeah, they're going to sign in 10 minutes. I'm like, were you on that call? Like that was not what just happened
Yeah,
here. So then
happy
that
years.
person
Yeah,
is now filling all of this information out. So like being able to refer back to a transcript and actually pull information on what legitimately happened versus like
yeah,
your vibe
objectivity,
from
right?
it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a
I mean, the other thing is like even if they have happy years, that's like in a lot of cases, like you're giving them a lot of credit because I've been a part of a lot of QBRs where a rep is up there talking about deals that I also did and is like weaving a completely different yarn than my understanding of what happened. And I get it because like QBRs are basically like these shows where you march your reps up in front of all their colleagues and then you eviscerate them on how bad their pipeline is and they don't want to go up there and like show like, well, yeah, I got like 20 ops, but like one of them is real and like 10 of them haven't responded to me in 2 months. And yeah, but then if you think about like if that's the story that they're telling, like what can like a sales manager or other leader do, right? Like how can they coach them if like they're not starting from like an objective truth? And then this is even like forgetting all the other stuff, like all the other teams that like have data that they want in the CRM, like marketing wants stuff that they want to track. CS, of course, has stuff they want to track. The product team wants to track like feature requests and integration requests and other things like that, right? So there's also this like latent demand. Like sales reps, like the best sales reps are ironically like the worst at CRM hygiene because they know it's like it doesn't help them close. Like if every hour they spend putting clean data into the CRM is an hour they spend not selling. So you actually don't even want your salespeople putting data into the CRM.
And what do they
I do
get
have
for it, right? That get someone else to yell at them if they don't agree with something they write.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then there's like a bunch of fields too. It's like you try to move, the stage to, qualification or whatever, stage 2, stage 3 is. And it comes up, it's like, you can't do that until you fill out these like 15 fields. And they're like,
half
shit,
of
like I
which are
don't
no
even,
longer relevant. Like ones that
yeah.
are
And
made up
like,
like 20 years ago. You don't know why you're still filling them out. Yeah.
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 And then you don't even know the answers to them. So you put like NA or you just make some stuff up, right? And then like the reports, if there even are reports down the line that are built off those fields, are just, completely broken, not trusted, bad data. So it definitely like starts at the bottom. And I think like before you can even start to think about this, like this is the problem that you have to solve. Like anything that you bolt on top of this is just going to be built on a like crumbling foundation. You got to fix the foundation before you build a strong house.
And
And
I'm gonna launch the poll right now around CRM hygiene, and I know we've got some of the answer options up here, but I did see actually, well, looks like maybe the question got deleted, but go ahead and fill out this poll, everybody, and then I'll ask this question, Rob, and maybe you're going to get into this later too, but
Yeah.
we're talking about, call transcripts, manual data entry into the CRM. Obviously, when you're in an inside sales sort of environment and most of your selling takes place over Zoom or, conversations like this, right? And you're able to leverage call transcripts to automate a bunch of that. That's one
Yeah.
aspect. But I know even for me, right, I text, there's a couple of like prospects, customers I have where we're kind of on a text sort of basis. And actually like that's the way I've closed a
Yeah.
couple of deals with them. Others have mentioned they're in industries like medical devices, pharma, where maybe a lot of these conversations actually do happen in meetings, like in person, face to face
Yeah.
sort of
In person.
meetings. So how maybe in environments outside of the inside sales heavy Zoom, sort of heavy world, how should people be thinking about some of those manual data entry problems?
Yeah. 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 There's two ways. I mean, the best way is always to like do what you can to record it. and just like have that there for posterity. And there's apps now that, you know, you just open up your phone and record and you have an in-person conversation, and it can do that. That's the best. Like sometimes people are like, you know, what the hell are you doing? Like turn that off. Right. But you're always like taking raw notes. And so that's second best. If you have raw notes, it's often very hard. Like when it's like stream of consciousness, you're like trying to talk to people, you're trying to present a lot of times. Like, so your notes, like, you know, oftentimes like I'll look at my notes afterwards and they don't even make sense to me. Right. And then then I'm burdened with then going to the CRM and like taking these raw notes and my recollection of it and then putting that into like structured fields and questions that people are asking. You know, that part is super hard. So the second best would just be like load in your raw notes and have a process that just like reads the raw notes and says, oh, I need to update this field and I need to update this field. And this field is now, you know, this value, right? Like that would be second best. But definitely like the richest data set, like I always call like conversations like analog data because there's just like so much depth to them. There's of course like the stuff that sales cares about, but then there's other stuff like, you know, what about like there's 5 people in the room, like they probably all have like different needs, wants, problems that they're trying to solve. Some of them are going to be your champions, some of them are going to be like, you know, detractors, if not like all out blockers. Like how do you track that stuff as well? So like if you have the transcript, you can get all that stuff. It doesn't always like come through on notes, but it's better than nothing. Just like get humans out of the task of filling out specific fields is basically, I think, the answer here.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to end our poll. Before I share the results, where do you think majority of people are going to be on this?
I mean, I would be shocked if it's anything except for ever like terrible, you know, like maybe poor. It's funny though, because like sometimes I'll talk to sales leaders and they'll say like, yeah, I'm really proud of our CRM hygiene.
Yeah.
And then like you like talk to them and then you actually like show them what's possible. And they're like, wow, I didn't realize how bad this actually is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, here are the results. We do have apparently there is one unicorn among us right now who has teams that are entering everything accurately, and then we have I don't know the opposite of the unicorn who are someone who is pretty sure their AEs have never even logged in to their CRM. But not surprisingly, most people feel it's very inconsistent and they only do it when yelled at. And I think going back to what you also just mentioned, you don't know what you don't know. And especially if the environment you're coming from or maybe the place you were at previously had, for example, a terrible sort of environment when it comes to data entry, and now you're at a place where it's like, hey, people are at least logging something some of the time, right? You're like, yeah, that's incredible, right? But to your point, that's not what's possible.
Yeah. And like everything, if anybody else is a stats nerd, that was a pretty Gaussian distribution bell curve there, right? So the whole point is move that bell curve over to the excellent, right? And the only way to do that is to automate this stuff. But it's like not just a sales thing either. And I think it's like everything is super fragmented, right? If you think of like all the other go-to-market teams, I'm talking about like marketing here, I'm talking about product and customer success. And I do consider product a go-to-market team because ideally they are acting as a go-to-market team. You're building for the market, right? You have to understand the market. I think product might yell at me and say that they're closer to engineering, but the entire company is go-to-market, really. But everybody's using these different systems, and at best, they're like loosely tied together, you know? And like everybody sucks at this stuff. Like how many times, like, you know, I've been an engineer and I get a ticket from a PM and I'm like, I'm not even sure what you want me to build here or like why we're building it. It doesn't make any sense. The data's not there. Like what impact does this have? Like what knock-on effects does this have? You know, CSMs, they'll use tools like Gainsight, which is basically like, you know, Salesforce with a different logo, but marketed towards CSMs. Same problem, right? Exact same problem. Like you have to go in there, you have to put in stuff. You still don't know. You still find out a month before renewal that there's like a churn risk, right? It's not like the system works so well where you find out, you know, months after implementation, like, oh, this is going to be a sticking point for us. We better start to work on this. No, you find out a month before and then you beg for, you know, the renewal and give a bunch of discounts and things like that. And marketing is probably, I mean, like one, I'd say like they generate the most like objective data of any team, but it's not tied together at all. And it's not actually like super useful. And it's not tied to like actual customers. Like the biggest thing that I can say here is like, what is the definition of an MQL and an SQL? and put your marketing leader and your sales leader in a room and have them talk about that, and then like watch like a big cat fight happen because they just don't agree on what these things are.
Yeah, and that's not even bringing in like the inside sales part of it or like the actual customer success part of it for upsells and renewals and things like that when you're talking about marketing too. So that usually just gets that typically falls by the wayside in most companies as well.
Yeah.
Or as Adam puts it, and then they agree and forget what they agreed to and have that fight again 3 months later or 3 weeks later, three
Yeah, you
days
definitely
later.
want to be recording that call.
Yeah.
All this really just makes you wonder, like, what are we doing here? Like, why do we have a CRM if there is no standardization of utilization? And really now we've all relegated it to this database so we can remember where things are stored. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, even like I'll look at the three logos on the slide here. Like, is there anything that they are doing that is unique? And I don't think the answer is going to be a resounding yes. Maybe there's some things here and there on the margins, but like if everyone sucks at this and the tools we have aren't ideal and I forgot the word ideal, aren't good. I like raise your hand if you enjoy working out of any of your go-to-market tech stack tools. Rob, you keep your hand down. That's not fair. Like I think that we're up for a very rude awakening. Like I come from the vendor side also, like where I was selling in go-to-market tech. I think we're up for a rude awakening across the business. And as like a buyer of go-to-market tech, I like most things I see in demo, I start wondering how long is this going to be relevant for my business? Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Is it, like I'm hesitant to sign any contract. Like I'm
Yeah.
very vocal about how I'm anti a particular set of tools out there. But even that I'm rethinking because like maybe having no point of view for a tool is a valid perspective in a world where technology changes no longer on 12 to 18 month cycles, but in 12 to 18 week cycles. And I think there's a lot of risk for us on both sides of the equation.
I think
Yeah.
like working with a huge number of like just different tech stacks, what I end up whenever someone's like, well, we might buy this, I'm like, okay, like what are you going to do with it? And are the people who are supposed to be utilizing whatever that is ready to actually implement and use it? Because none of these are really helping you use your data to make smarter decisions. And that's sort of where most of this ends up. Like Jared, to your point, like,
Well,
what are you
think of
doing?
this
Like, what are
question,
you
Courtney.
doing with this?
Well, I mean, so we had this slide before, right? Like easy questions that you should have. Like, what does C in CRM stand for? It stands for customer. And like just even building a report in Salesforce, or I mean, I'm picking on Salesforce here, but really in the CRM, like, okay, give me a list of my customers. Like, can anybody reliably actually even do the most basic thing that they're supposed to do and tell you who your customers are and what products they're using?
And that data doesn't even really live in a CRM today. Like it lives in
Yeah.
PDF documents. So your customer contracts with start dates and end dates and what products have different terms, those aren't in your CRM for the most part. Like I've at a previous company, I did this effort that was ungodly to just digitize our contracts. And because I was asked the question, how many customers do we have? That exact question, Robin, you know who asked it. And it was borderline impossible to answer. And it just like I keep going back to I think we're doing all of this wrong. Like, why do we have a CRM? Shakar asks, and like he makes a joke in the chat, but like customer, we need to track our customers. We need to make sure we know what our customers want from us. We need to hold ourselves accountable to delivering what our customers want. Because if we don't do that, then we're not in business. There's no point of us being here. Because we're here to make sure that our customers' lives are better. That's it. And like I was at Salesforce for a while. That is drilled into us that we are the helper to our customer. And that's how this needs to be. And so this is all really
Yeah.
frustrating. Like just like the state of the market today.
Yeah. And this slide, like, I don't want to take, like, nobody should take away some like kumbaya, like customer is at the center of our world here. Like, that's not what the point of this slide. The point of this slide is like the customer is the one generating the data that all these teams needs to listen to and like drive their strategy from. And that needs to be like the unifying factor. And like, we'll talk about this in a minute here. You actually can solve this problem. Like it is solvable. We'll get to that. I mean, we're bitching a lot about other different stuff and like how bad things are, but like the whole point of this thing is to show like that this can get better. because there's a lot of data nowadays that's generated by the customer that like it's completely unstructured, right? It's through conversations, it's through emails, it's through support tickets, it's through like LinkedIn posts or like whatever, right? Like it's all unstructured. It's not in reportable formats. And I think this is like another problem that people are making, because like a lot of people are trying to solve this problem. Like they'll throw a chatbot at it, right? That's not going to solve it. Like you still need reportable data, meaning like you need fields in some sort of reporting system. And I actually do think that this is something that CRMs are pretty good at. Their problem isn't their ability to report. Their problem is the data that they're trying to report on. But you still need like, Boolean fields. You still need pick lists. You still need date fields so you can like do comparisons. You still need, numbers and like text fields too. Sure, that's fine. Those are more for like human consumption explanation, but like reports are driven off of structured data, right? So basically, if you have this, yeah, go for it, Jared.
Like you said something like I have to ask you, like I know you have a point of view on this. What happens when humans aren't the ones reading or analyzing or generating reports? Does the structured data matter in that way?
I mean, until like the context window of models gets way, 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 way like orders of magnitude bigger, and the costs get orders and orders of magnitude smaller, and reliability at like large context inputs goes up. Yes, like it absolutely does. But that doesn't mean that they're like irrelevant here. Like chatbots, I think, because then you just like you point a chatbot, you add the context of like all of your customer data into the system prompt of a chatbot, and you say, I have a question, and it could do that. The problem is like they're really not good at that today. And like this is the problem that we ran into at Harvey, where it's like somebody would like a lawyer would upload a doc and say like how many mentions of this are in this like 400-page doc, right? The chatbot would give an answer, but if you asked it again, it would give a different answer. And that was like data that was like fully within the context window. Like they're not good at counting. Like they don't have like the infrastructure internally, like the way that they work and like predicting the next word, like isn't designed for that sort of thing. And I think it'll take like a different type of model before that is actually fixed. But like if you even go like lower, right? Like you can, as this data comes in, you can generate the structure from that at that time, and then it's reportable. Like then you kind of run into the problem where it's like, well, what if I have a question that like we weren't asking from, right? Like if you store your unstructured data correctly, then you can go back and you can generate like replay, like, hey, what if I was asking this question from the beginning, and generate the structure from that, and then you can build a report on that reliably. So like AI definitely has a place in this, but it's not like a panacea.
Yeah, I'm working with a company, like a security questionnaire company, and that's one of the things we're doing right now, like Conveyor. So I'm working with like their CS ops team, and what we're actually talking about is like building out an infrastructure to make changes and things easier in the future. They're not a huge company, but they're just like thinking super far ahead about how they're growing, what they want to see when they're doing these things. So like, even if we don't have the right question right now, let's build this out in a way that all of this can be referred back to, we can access this very simply and easily, and it's not going to break in the future, so that we're like building this infrastructure for growth, but also like insights that we haven't thought of. Because especially if you're using AI for anything, you need to really define what you're asking it to do and put those parameters on it. So you don't really want to say like, tell me something interesting about this, like you have to like tell it what interesting is beforehand. So maybe I don't know what's interesting right now, or I'm wrong about it. So you have to just sort of, it's like building everything out, like you don't, like just knowing that you're probably missing something. So build it out in a way that you can come back and make smart edits later.
Well, even like to your point, prompting, like, tell me something interesting about this. Like somebody else would phrase that completely differently and get completely different results, because you're leaving a lot up for interpretation there. So I mean, it's, the ways that people are trying to solve this problem, like I've even seen some people post on LinkedIn where it's like, reporting is dead. I'm like, your brain is like, what are you talking about? Like, that's like maybe the dumbest thing I've seen on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has like, it's 99% dumb things. Anyways, quick poll, every company I've been at, like my answer to this is somewhere between poor and terrible. Like they don't even know what they're doing. Like I was at a company who marketing never generated, like over years, never generated like a single actual like qualified lead. Like they were talking about stuff the product didn't even do. It was wild.
I mean, this is the role of RevOps, right? To be that the functional glue.
in
Should
theory,
be.
right? Versus like how things are actually in practice. Like RevOps should be aligning everyone and, making helping the business make better decisions, but you can't make people listen.
It needs to be CEO down. Like if a CEO is not in agreement with that point of view, it will never happen. If the CEO is passively in agreement, it will never happen. If the CEO is actively in agreement, it will happen. And that is the only function that they'll get the ELT aligned. Um, I just talked to another like unicorn unicorn company's CRO, and like we were chatting about the politics inside of the C-suite. And that's like, I think the biggest blocker of this question that's up on the screen right now is not your systems, it's not your data, it's not your RevOps team, it's not your sales ops team, it's your ELT engagement, and the different motivations that exist there. So without like, if you're interviewing for a company, one of the like, I'll tell you for me, like one of the things that I really dialed in on is like how strong is your CEO in the ELT? How aligned is the ELT, and what are the political factions that exist there? That is the like if you could answer those three questions, you'll know if you have a job in a year, and you'll know if it's possible to have this alignment.
I think you can circumvent it now. Like I think this is what I want to talk about, because like like I think that can exist at like a really small company, right? Where like the CEO can have a pulse on kind of like everything that's going on and like truly direct, what every team is doing. Like once a company reaches a certain, you just can't know. Like, well, I think there's like, the human can only like actively know, like the circle like within a like human can be like 100 people max or something like that. Like beyond that, like you just can't maintain that number of connections. So I think that's probably about where that breaks down. Because then you have like CMOs, CROs, et cetera, that all have their own thing. Marketing, they have to, they all have slides in the board deck. And, marketing is going to paint a picture that's rosy for them, just like AEs do in a QBR. And, the CRO is going to, if things aren't looking good, it's because the leads are bad, like Glenn Ross style, right? It's not their fault. So like, you have these like conflicting things because like they're not all aligned towards the same goal, I don't think.
I just had a flashback, Rob, of creating board decks, and then the VP of sales would be like, "Oh no, those pipeline numbers are wrong," and then he'd add a bunch of deals that apparently were very large and just never existed in the
Yeah.
the CRM.
Like take
It's
a
like,
Sharpie to the
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I shared the results of our poll here on the alignment. It looks like everybody's in that kind of good to poor sort of camp. I'm actually surprised no one responded terrible, that they actively hate each other, because I feel like with all of us out here, I know there's some teams where there's some active hatred going on, but maybe different flavors, and you can still get somewhat aligned in that sort of environment.
I've been in one that was terrible, and I'll tell you, again, it's the CEO, like it's the ELT. Like I don't think any like Rob, I agree with what you said generally, but I think even at large companies, if the CEO is strong and like insert authoritative, pick your verbiage here, like you can get a lot done by forcing action. I was a company that was like 700 or so people where I was working, and the CEO did not force that. And what happened was the CFO and the CMO and CRO and the head of product and the head of CS like just had ongoing constant conflict. And like, sure, there were definitely like alliances in that group, but not to solve the problem. And the CEO just let it happen, stood back. And he knew it was happening. I think everyone told him about it, but he didn't do it. And so if he had taken action, that company would be in a wildly different place than it is today. I'm very, I
familiar,
think, I
man.
don't think there's any way around I don't want to use the word weak CEO, like around a CEO who doesn't step in and
Yeah.
engage.
But I think a lot of, okay, so there could be like personality traits there, right? Where they're just kind of like more passive and like adverse to conflict. And then I think there's like other things as well, right? Like what if you don't, like how do you settle an argument where you don't know who's right? Right? Like if you need data to back that up.
I mean, that's the job. You make a decision.
Yeah.
And I think the two of you guys, I mean, you've been both built and run businesses. You will never have perfect data, and no one ever will. And even you won't even have good data 90% for 90% of the decisions you need to make. But you need to make a decision, and to make a decision, you need to know your business, and you need to trust your gut, and you need to trust like talk to the board. But you need to make a decision. If you don't make a decision, your business dies.
Yeah. But I think we can solve this. I really do. I think. So there's this concept of the common customer data model. So again, like remember the customer at the center of like the entire business, especially like the 4 go-to-market teams. Everything, okay, so you'll notice like something is glaringly missing in here. I'm just going to bring this up now. There's no leads object on this. Everything is contact. I don't know. I'm going to throw that grenade right now, but like leads should die in the fire. Like they're just not connected to anything else. That entire concept like that Salesforce started with, where like everything starts as a lead and then gets converted to an account opportunity and contact. Like it just, I don't know if that ever worked, but like maybe it worked in a world where the hypothesis is that salespeople are actually going to go in and when they have a conversation with the lead, click that convert button and all the other fields are mapped to all the other objects. But I think like if you have leads in your CRM, like you're going to be hard pressed to actually fix this problem.
I think there's there's an interesting reason, I don't know, but I think that they have the leads, which is that we used to live in a world where data, like getting data about your TAM was near impossible. Who are the companies you should be selling to? Well, you got the yellow pages, and let's start going through that. Like I'm old enough to remember like having to go through and scrape websites to get company names to then research, and like manually have to do this stuff. And so, but today it doesn't exist. So if I know my entire TAM or a large part of it, then I know their accounts. I know that I can start researching the people in there. We get the data, we get the contact data. You don't need the leads. Leads are, I think there might be something here. Let's evaluate it. Let's figure that out. Let's research it. But we've kind of like skipped that entire step of the journey. At the same time that our leads, our contacts, our potential customers, they're going 80% of the buyer journey without us also. And so by the time we're talking to them, they've mostly made up their mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think contacts can serve as leads, right? Like it's just a field on a contact really. Or it's even better is the associations between the other objects, right? It's like a contact should always be associated with an account, unless like you're just like, B2C, right? Then that probably doesn't make a ton of sense. But I'm talking about B2B here. Contact should always be associated with an account, right? It's just so you know, like, who are you talking to? Like if you have a target account that you're trying to break into, like who are you talking to? Right? Using leads, that's like impossible. Like how many leads do you have that actually belong to the same company? I don't know. I mean, I was at a company where like we set it up every time there was a sign up, it would create a lead. And I couldn't even build a report like, okay, how many users of our tool do we have at this account? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, you have to like make a million fields to sort of circumvent it. And it seems like everybody uses leads in like a different bad way. So it's anywhere you go when they're using them, they're doing something very weird with them and like sort of just shoving it all together. None of it's great.
Bad being the very important word that you just mentioned there.
Yeah, I think like with how much you guys, I agree completely. Like leads make some because it's and because Salesforce is like set up to go off of the lead in a lot of ways, I think that's one of the problems too. It's like if they need to just kill it for everybody so that there's nothing like hinging on that for any sort of attribution or other things like that, because it shouldn't really be coming in that way, especially if that person already exists.
Yeah, the fact that we have to build things that just auto convert leads to contacts, like to Jared's point, like why? Like why have we gotten to a point where like we're okay with that being something that we just need to do?
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is like to my point of like contacts, like they can be leads, right? So if you have a contact that's not associated with an opportunity and the account doesn't have any associated opportunity, they're a lead, right? They're a contact that's associated with an account that you want to sell to, but you're not actively talking to them and the account isn't a customer, right? You can figure this stuff out just purely through the associations. Associations are a huge deal because then data can flow. And that's the entire point of this common customer like data model here. If you set it up this way, like magical things can happen. And like, well, we'll talk about that. But then if you think about like, okay, so who's a prospect? A prospect being somebody who you are talking to, right? A qualified lead, if you will. Well, they're associated with an opportunity, right? You're actively talking to them. Like I know nobody uses the opportunity contact role in Salesforce, but you should because it's a big deal, right? Like it does fix a lot of problems and does bring a lot of clarity to like who your actual customers are, who your prospects are, who your leads are, and then finally, who your customers are, right? If I'm a contact and I'm associated with a closed one-up, I'm a customer. If I'm an account and I have a closed one-up, I'm a customer, right? If I'm an account and I don't have any opportunities, I'm a lead. If I'm an account, I only have closed lost opportunities, I'm a lead. If I'm an account, I have an open opportunity, I'm a prospect, right? It's like the entire like data model flows from here. And what's super cool about this is like, then you can flow all the unstructured data really in through contacts, and everything makes its way to where it needs to go. And we'll talk about this in a second. I know this sounds maybe a little crazy, but I promise this is like a very, very reasonable, and I have yet to hear an argument as to like why or how there would be something better than this particular data structure and the relationships here. I mean, the problem with CRMs too is like this stuff isn't even like enforced. Like you'll go into HubSpot and like, why are there all these contacts that like, why can I create a contact without like having an account? Like at the very least, you can still have just like a generic placeholder account for like people with Gmails and stuff, right? But that association should be 100% enforced. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox about this, but there is precedent for this. It actually comes from ServiceNow. And ServiceNow is a massive company. And I would argue that this entire concept is why ServiceNow is a massive company and like why they absolutely dominate the enterprise versus like any other ITSM. They have this common service data model. If you want to go to sleep early tonight, you can start reading about what the common service data model is, but it's like basically the same thing, right? Like if you set up, because like ServiceNow at its heart is just a relational database, right? Salesforce at its heart is just a relational database. Now, just because it's a relational database, there's lots of bad ways to put together a relational database. Like especially it's a relational database. So if those relations or associations aren't there, what's the point of having a relational database? But what's really cool about the common service data model that ServiceNow has is, this looks a little crazy as well, but it leads to standardization. So this is focused on IT, right? So then there's like this common language across IT. Everybody's using the same words. So all the teams are using the same words. There's better decision making. So I'll just like jump to the next slide here because like there's like actually use cases here. But by like unifying this across, like ServiceNow is able to like bring this visibility to like ITSM. So like in a database server goes down, if you have these like relationships created, it shows like exactly which business services are affected. SREs get notified immediately, and you can prioritize, like which customers are impacted. So if you all of a sudden get a flood of tickets, ServiceNow can tell you like, hey, this thing is down, and here are all the related things that are impacted. Or if you're just trying to like patch something and you need downtime, like, okay, hey, we're taking the service down. Like, what does that actually mean? I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's like a fire alarm thing going off in the back. Okay, cool. But before they do that, like they can plan for that because they know everything that this is going to impact. Now, before like I put everybody to sleep and lose everybody on this, like this is literally what we can do for go-to-market, right? So say like you have this common customer data model, right? You have a sales call and a prospect just says something like, wow, this would really solve a pain point for us that we've had for a long time. It would be even better if it could do X, right? So even now, like that's probably not even input into the CRM. There might not even be a field to put that into the CRM. They may send a Slack message to like the product channel. Hey, this feature was requested. They might share an entire Gong call, say, hey, this customer was super excited about us. Nobody watches like an hour-long Gong call, right? But what you can do here, if you have this data model correct, you have the unstructured data where this thing was said, now marketing can immediately know that, hey, this feature was requested by this ICP persona, and here's the value that they found in it. CS can immediately know and be notified that this customer wants to deploy these use cases that they talked about. So, they're starting off on the right foot when they do deployments, and then product immediately knows that this person, because they're associated with this company, and what that opportunity amount is worth. Again, like the associations are super important here. It's worth this much. They requested this feature. Right. So if you can turn this unstructured data into structured data and you get these associations right, like you can push the value to where it needs to go. Like this is truly the unifying thing. So like Jared, when you were saying earlier about like, you need a super strong CEO, like that's like, I think RevOps can do this today. Like if you figure this out, you can bring value to all these teams. Like you can start showing things that they didn't know before. And like, I think you can build groundswell from this, like without necessarily even like tacit approval from up top.
I think that there's two sides here. You're absolutely right, by the way. I don't like hear me out on this one. I think that what you were describing from a technical perspective and from a system and process perspective outside of technical is a very good perspective. We talked about this a lot. I will still stand on the point that without a strong CEO forcing this alignment, it will never happen at a company-wide level. Yes, you might have the data all in one place. Sure, fine. That does not.
Courtney looks like she's going to fight you right now.
I keep going, Jared, sir. I'll go after you're done.
Okay. And I'll make it quick. It is data. So the last 4 companies I was at, the data might be fine, like not fine, but good enough. And the alignment might be, and the data side might be good enough. But the people are the problem 99% of the time. Yes, we see it in change management with AEs. It's even worse when you're managing up because they truly don't care. What they care about is what drives their comp plan, what's going to get them vested, and their positioning in front of the board to make sure they keep their jobs. And if the CEO doesn't make it contingent on them working together, they have no incentive to work together. That's it.
At first, if Jared and I were going to fight, it would have happened like 15 years ago at this point, I think. So we're past that point. I actually largely agree with what you just said. So it comes back to like your team's goal alignment. So yes, like the C-levels need to be aligned to allow for this, but like marketing's goals can't be against sales goals. CS's goals can't be like to the detriment of these other teams. And it can't all just be like drop what you're doing and help sales at any cost. But like this structure where everything like actually has value, the teams have to be receptive to it. So you can't have complacent teams either. So they need to have goals. They need to have goals. They need to like be a little bit hungry, but they also need to align with the company and what's for the benefit of the company versus just like more MQLs, but it doesn't matter if they convert, things like that, like everything has to be aligned so that everybody wants to do a better job. Everybody benefits when a better job is done. And it's not just like more data I don't know how to use. But you can take this so far. You can take it to like, okay, the people who have this problem tend to be like our lower tier users, but if we made this more self-serve, would less of them churn? You can do so much stuff with this. You can like have this information follow these people when they go to new companies, because everybody changes companies super quickly too.
Yep.
Then you know how to approach them when you're finding them as well. So there's so much value to this, but I think everybody does. As someone who's worked in RevOps and like who consults with teams, if they're not on board to hear this, like that's actually one of the first questions I tend to ask people is like, how are your teams comped? Like, because me understanding like how far we can go and how much we can push and change and like innovate here really depends on how people's willingness. If they're hitting all their goals and not doing anything, they're not really inclined to like upend what's happening either. So that's complacency. And Robert, we talked about this the other day. Like complacency is probably one of the biggest problems that you see is just people are fine with this. It's fine. They don't want to innovate, which is crazy to me, but people just want to clock in, clock out. And even if it would do better be better for everybody else, they don't necessarily want to do it.
Yeah. I mean, my point is that like, I'd say a lot of companies are in a spot where there probably is politics, where it's very difficult to make this happen from top down. I think my point is that like RevOps can start fixing this stuff right now. Now, a complacent RevOps person can't. I don't think anybody who joined this call is like falls into that, because here they are, right? They're actively participating, right? I have worked with very complacent RevOps people who would never take this on because why rock the boat?
Didn't you say you've worked with Jared?
Sounds like
in the
a lot
past?
of work. I have. That's not who I'm referring to. But I mean, I think you can start to build a groundswell of this, right? If you start to say like, hey, marketing, here's a list of people that's going to be constantly updated that you can talk to. that are top champions and the reasons why they're top champions and their ICP persona. And by the way, like here's the person who is closest to them and like owns that contact. How happy is marketing going to be? Right? They have direct quotes and ICP from their ICPs that happen, like say in sales conversations or customer success conversations. It doesn't really matter. Saying exactly what they like, what they love. Now that like voice of customer stuff, if that could make its way into marketing, right? That's a lot better. Like you're letting your customer drive your marketing, and like right now, that's usually not how that works. I do want to talk a little bit about like how to get started here, right? I think the easiest place to get started is just this. Like most everybody has this stuff. The other stuff is harder. Like you need to be tracking this stuff, but almost every sales team on the planet now is like recording their sales calls. So they're not recording every single one. They don't have to. But you start here. Emails going back and forth between your company and your customers and prospects, and then calls happening. You know, this is the richest data set. Start here and move on to the rest. And then you can do stuff like this like right away, right? Understand who your champions are. And I think, to my point, like RevOps should own this. Like if you don't have the ability to say like go into Salesforce and like get rid of the lead object, it's probably a lot of work because there's probably a lot of like ways that leads are created that you're going to have to change, but like you got to start there. You got to start like on the data model, enforcing associations, automatically creating accounts, automatically creating contacts, automatically enriching them, get humans out of the business of like even creating records. They shouldn't have to create records. Like that's just like anytime you insert humans into like data creation, like it's going to get messed up. And then why RevOps should own this, you know, customers at the center. Like honestly, I think RevOps is at the center of this. Like there's like Courtney, you do a lot of work, whether you were just saying earlier, like you're doing a lot of work with like customer success teams. And I know you do a lot of like marketing ops and stuff. And you usually get pulled in to help these various teams already. And this is like nobody in sales is going to own this. They all have their own goals right now. Nobody in product is going to own this. Nobody in CS is going to own this, and nobody in marketing is definitely not going to own this, right? So I think that leads like the people who actually like are in charge of the data infrastructure for go to market as the ones that can actually like drive change. And sure, like you probably do need to get the CEO on board, but if you show them something, say, hey, this is why it's worth investing in. I think you can affect that change. Any thoughts, guys? I know we're about out of time here too.
Yeah.
One last poll. Go ahead, Jared.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I just, I think like the last word I would share with all the RevOps people in the audience here is like we can design the most elegant and beautiful things. Everything will fail if the people don't use it and the people aren't pushing it. If you don't have internal champions, like think of your job as sales. You need to sell this. Who's your buyer group? Who are your champions? Like who's your user group? Who are your dev groups? Like think of it like how can you propagate? Because nothing matters unless you do that. And it just there's some like Rob has built, and I've seen what Rob has built. Like I took the job after he left to go and start a company. Like I've seen what he's built. If people don't use the tools that you build, you're shouting at a wall. Like and it sucks because like you can build the most elegant, amazing things, and Rob has. Like I'm hands down in awe from what I've seen.
Jared.
But if it falls on deaf ears from reps who don't know how to use technology and don't want to learn how to use technology, or sales leaders or CEOs, you can't get the buy-in to actually affect the change.
Yeah, it's best to usually just start with like it can be small, but like something that will actually change their lives really quickly. It doesn't matter what it is, even if you think it's stupid, something that's going to like get people on your side. Then you can do some of these bigger things if you can like get rid of some of those first, like something manual or something that just really annoys them. But you got to talk to people and figure out like what's going to make them sort of your champion across these teams.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you all have hit on is that the tools or the technology or building these associations to get this kind of unified data model that this customer centric data model that Rob was talking about are all parts of the process. But if you can't build trust with stakeholders on these different teams, if you can't adequately tell stories on why they should be doing things, why they should not be doing things, how you're helping them delivering value, then none of that other stuff really matters, right? And that is part of your job. That's why, when Rob showed the Venn diagram there, like you are at the center because that is part of what you can and should own and are very highly capable of doing. And Rob, why don't you go ahead? We got 1 minute left. Why don't you go ahead and just kind of give us some of these closing thoughts
Yeah.
for people as we get wrapped up?
Yeah, I just want to like get the point across that like this does seem like a lot. It seems like a huge project to undertake, but there are like, the continuous evolution that you can make here, like crawl, walk, run. And the first thing to do is just like remove humans from CRM. Like you'll never solve this problem as long as people are creating and are in charge of updating all of the data on records. Like it's going to fail if you don't remove humans from that loop. You have to, because if you remove humans from the loop, then the second one can happen. You enforce the object relationships, and you can actually start to like understand who are our customers, who are our prospects, where are their upsell opportunities, where's their churn risk, what ICP, who is our ICP, stuff like that. Start to build a plan for like where your unstructured data is generated and how you can import that, but start with what you already have. Right? I think everything in the crawl thing here you can do in under a month or two. I don't know how complex your system is. It could take you personally longer to do that. But these are things that need to happen anyway. So start from here, and these other things get a lot easier, right? Ingesting the other data sources, where they come from, tickets, customer conversations with CS, product usage, importing that data. And then you get here, setting up alerts, right? Marketing's alerted when there's like, a new ICP, strong ICP that would be a good candidate for a case study or a quote on the website. Product is alerted when like a huge customer requests a feature automatically without anybody having to play a role in that. This is where you can really be at the center of that change.
Yeah. All right. And then, Rob, one last question I got to ask is, should you have evacuated wherever you are like 10 minutes ago because of this alarm that's going off?
Smells like smoke a little bit.
All right. That's dedication,
I haven't been
man.
kicked out yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're at top of the hour. Rob apparently has to most likely evacuate. I'm sure everybody else has to get to some meetings, other things. I want to say a big thank you to Rob, Courtney, and Jared for being panelists today, and to all of the attendees out there. Thank you very much for joining us as well. That's all we got for you. Fill out the survey that we asked for feedback on when you depart the webinar today, and we will see you all at the next one. Take it easy, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Matt.
Bye.